Hey friends, and welcome back to another video. If you're new here, my name is Ray and I'm a Cambridge student in my second year studying physics. And in this video, we'll be learning how to effectively learn online, as I know that many of you will have online classes and have to self-study over the coming weeks and potentially months. So this video will be based on both my experiences of having studied online during my final term of my first year of university, and when I had study leave back in year 11 and 13. As always, timestamps will be in the description down below, so let's get straight to the video. So the number one problem that we all face when studying at home is trying to stay focused. The problem arises from the fact we do plenty of activities besides studying in one environment, whether it be watching YouTube videos, playing games, texting friends, and everything else. We associate our environment with all these activities, so studying can prove to be more difficult. Ideally, we should go into another room or the library so we could have one environment associated with just studying. But since this may not always be the case, we need to reduce the distractions and temptations that lead us to do other activities. I will briefly mention the most obvious strategy, which is to put your phone on Do Not Disturb and away, ideally in another room or just out of arm's reach from where you work. I personally keep mine in the bottom shelf of my closet and only check it maybe a few times a day. If you're worried that your family may have to call you in case of an emergency, then add them as contacts who can bypass the Do Not Disturb mode, and they should still be able to call you anyway. You should be able to find that feature on your phone, and if you can't, then just Google it. That way you can stay at ease whilst getting stuff done. Next, we should try using the Pomodoro technique. In case you haven't heard of this technique, it involves us deciding on a task to focus on and setting a timer for 25 minutes called a Pomodoro session. During each session, we focus on the task at hand and avoid all other distractions. At the end of the 25 minutes, we take a 5-minute break and then repeat another 25-minute Pomodoro session on the same task or a different task. We repeat this, then after every 4 Pomodoro sessions, we take a longer 15-minute break instead. Now, this doesn't have to be a rigid structure, it's merely a guideline and we can vary the times to whatever works for us. Whether it be that we focus for 15 minutes and take a 10-minute break, or focus for 90 minutes and take a 20-minute break, or anything else in between. Whatever combination we choose, this approach has a few advantages. Number one, it means that we won't get tired of focusing, as 25 minutes for most people is long enough to get a good amount of work done, but not too long that we begin to find ourselves losing focus. However, if we find that 25 minutes is too short, we may choose to do a longer session instead, like 40 minutes. Number two, it allows us to focus on a single task at hand. When we sit down, it can be tempting to jump between different topics and revising whichever one we feel like, but by making a commitment that for the next 25 minutes we're only going to focus on, for example, one set of practice problems in chemistry, can help us stay focused. Number three, it helps us to break down large tasks into smaller subtasks so they're more manageable. For example, let's say our goal was to go through the entire topic of electrolysis in chemistry. We may set 2 25-minute Pomodoros to watch some YouTube videos explaining the topic whilst making some brief notes, then spend another Pomodoro turning these brief notes into flashcards, and finally spend 2 more Pomodoros doing some exam questions for practice and to test our understanding. Breaking down tasks like this makes them seem more manageable and achievable. Number 4, most importantly, ensures we're taking breaks regularly. It's a good idea to step back from our work and allow ourselves to relax, as we often come back knowing the solution to an exam question that we've been struggling with, or some concept that we've been struggling to understand could finally click in our brains when we're on our break. This is related to focused and diffused modes of thinking. In case you're interested, I put a link in the description to something explaining this. Now, there are a number of Pomodoro apps that you can use for both phones and computers, which I will link down below, but I personally avoid using apps because when setting or stopping the Pomodoro timer, there's a risk of checking Instagram or Snapchat, which is only a few taps away, and next thing we know, we've spent the last 30 minutes scrolling through it. Because of that risk, I prefer to use a physical timer which I bought off Amazon. I will leave a link in the description to one that I use. Whilst it is £14, the return on investment for me has been huge. I no longer have the risk of getting distracted by apps on my phone because I have a way of keeping track of my Pomodoros without relying on any devices. Also, the ringing sound it makes when it reaches 0 is loud enough that I can hear it over music, but its volume can also be reduced. I also keep a post-it note next to the timer to tell you how many Pomodoros I have done each day, as a way of looking back on both the day and the week. Another tip I often give is that we should keep a piece of paper next to us on which we write down any distractions that come to mind. If we wonder how some random person from some club we used to attend is doing nowadays, rather than opening up Facebook and searching their names to find out, we should write down that distraction onto a separate piece of paper. After doing that, for me, it feels like I've already done the task, even though I haven't. Then, during the breaks, we should check the piece of paper, and in most cases we realized we couldn't care less about what such and such a person was doing, and that our brain was just making up excuses to not focus. Over time, the more often we do this, the more often we will realize that most of the distractions are just pointless, and over time, hopefully they should come up less frequently during our Pomodoro sessions. But ultimately, remember that we may begin to find ourselves getting distracted if the learning begins to feel uncomfortable. It may be because we need to understand a new topic for the first time, or do an exam question which is too hard. And in that case, you should just stick to it. During that time, distractions like wondering how many likes your last photo on Instagram got are likely to come up, but it's best that we ignore these distractions, perhaps by writing them down as I mentioned before, and remembering that a sense of discomfort is a good sign that our studying is effective. If we find our studying to be too easy, we're probably studying wrong by using passive learning techniques like rereading our notes or highlighting, or that we're studying a topic which we find too easy. Think of it like going to a gym and doing weights. If we find the weights are too easy, then we're using the wrong weights. That said, we can't move up to heaviest weights, otherwise we'll get nowhere. We need to use the weights which are just heavy enough to cause us some discomfort when lifting them, as this means we're improving. And the same line of thinking applies to studying as well. I personally find it helpful to walk around the house, get some water, do some push-ups, read a few pages of a book, and generally step back from doing work for a period of time. In summary, to stay focused, we should put our phones on Do Not Disturb and out of arm's reach, use the Pomodoro technique and adjust the times to our liking, but use 25 minutes work, 5 minutes break as a baseline. Keep a list and write down any distractions that come to mind on them. And remember that some sense of discomfort when studying is bound to rise, and not using our phones during the short breaks. Now, what about staying organized? I talked at length about this in my video on how I stayed organized for A-levels, in which I explain how I used my paper-based planner, so do check that out for a more detailed explanation. But I will provide a short summary here. Basically, I don't like using to-do list apps, mainly because after making a to-do list and closing the app, I just forget about all the tasks I have to do that day. The app isn't always open to remind me, and since we want to minimize how often we check our phones, because with each time we check it, there is a risk of us scrolling through Instagram for the next 30 minutes, moving away from a mobile app to a physical to-do list can be beneficial for us. For those reasons, I prefer to use a paper-based planner and sticking it on the wall in front of my desk, so it's always in front of me. The planner consists of a grid of 9 rows going down for tasks and 7 columns going across for days of the week. I made a small adjustment from my previous version, which I featured in that video. In this version, I added a column P for the priority of a task. I had a bad habit of being too ambitious and setting myself too many large tasks for each day and getting none of them done. But if I set myself a few large tasks, I will get them done. I find that I can only manage to do 3 or 4 large tasks a day, which is why I added 4 rows labeled 1, 2, 3, 4 to limit myself to 4 large tasks each day. Then the following 5 rows labeled Q are for any quick tasks which take less than 30 minutes to do. The other side is the homework side, which I explained in my video on staying organized. A link to download this or the previous version without the priorities column will be in the description below. Now, I also find it useful to label them on Pomodoro sessions that I think a task will take. If I know that I can only manage to do 12 25-minute Pomodoro sessions a day, then I will make sure that all the tasks and their Pomodoro sessions add up to 12. You can figure out how many Pomodoro sessions that you can manage a day just by trying out the Pomodoro technique for a few days. Ultimately, we should try to be more intentional about which tasks we plan to do each day and try not to switch between tasks too frequently. We should work from the highest priority tasks at the top of the list to lowest priority at the bottom for a series of Pomodoro sessions. And for any quick tasks, we can do them before or after lunch, whilst waiting for dinner, or whenever we want to take a break from doing a large task. Now comes the topic of motivation. It's pretty common to be lacking motivation when we have no topic tests or exams coming up, but let's ask ourselves, what is motivation really? It's an assumption that we have to be in a particular mental or emotional state to complete a task. It's especially true for any task where you have to experience some short-term discomfort for long-term gains, like studying to do well in exams or exercising to stay healthy. If we really want to get stuff done, then we have to cut the link between feeling like doing something and actually getting the thing done. After all, former NBA player Jerry West once said, "You can't get much done in life if you only work on the days when you feel good." So rather than waiting around for a trigger to do the work, we should be cultivating discipline by building good and productive habits. I have linked some excellent videos on how to build good habits in the description, as well as an article on why you don't always need motivation. Now, whilst this is all true in an ideal world, we are all humans after all and can't always obey this logic and are subject to dozens of logical fallacies. So one thing I find to be particularly effective is having an accountability partner. Basically, work with one of your friends from school and every day tell them what you plan on doing that day in terms of schoolwork, and they will tell you what they plan on doing as well. Then, at the end of each day, you check up on each other over text or by calling each other and reflect on the day. Some things that you could reflect on is what you achieved that day, what you could do better next time, and how you plan on doing it. Ultimately, having someone who can hold us accountable to getting what we want to be doing done is a good way to ensure we're actually getting things done. Now, back at school, your day was broken up by break time, lunchtime, walking around to and from school, but being at home, the day can seem like one big fuzzy mess, and by the end of it, you end up asking yourself, where did all that time go? Now, breaking up your day can be done by just going on a walk around your neighborhood after lunch, or doing some stretches, press-ups, or general exercise at home. Or you can have a change in scenery by working in your living room or at your dining table instead. You can even call a friend every day at a certain time to give yourself a chance to step back from work and just socialize. Basically, find some opportunities to step back from work and give some structure to your day. It could even be watching 20 or 30 minutes of YouTube or a TV show after lunch and dinner every day, which is usually what I do. And lastly, perhaps the most important thing, is to ensure you're getting enough sleep every night. I would highly recommend watching this 14-minute video about the science of sleep and how it's good for memory consolidation and information processing. One of the key things is also getting a consistent amount of sleep. Sure, having 8 hours of sleep a night is good, but sleeping from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. one night and 2 a.m. to 10 a.m. the following night is not good either, because our sleeping is not consistent and it can interfere with our circadian rhythm, which is basically our biological clock. Personally, I try to be asleep by 11 p.m. and wake up at 7:30 a.m., which gives me 8 hours and 20 minutes of sleep, taking into consideration that it takes me about 10 minutes to fall asleep. Anyways, that's it from me. If you found the video useful, then leave a like. If not, leave a dislike, and please let me know why. If you have any questions, then leave a comment down below and I'll try to get back to you. But for now, I'll see you next time.